Fish sticks. No, fish sticks. Yo, sup? Yeah, no, we're not going to do that. Hey all, how's it going? Happy Friday. So I'm finally starting a new build, and I was originally going to just post progress as like a photo journal because I thought it would save time, but I realized that getting started, the first step here is got a little bit more going on than I think I could make clear in just photos. So then I'd have to sit there and write descriptions, and it's just easier to make a video. Plus, it's the first time I'm using fish glue, which is named for its inventor, Abe Vigoda. No, it's not. It's made from desiccated fish bits. Hide glue is made from desiccated cow bits or cowhide. And Type Bond is some artificial scientific stuff made in a lab. But anyway, yeah, fish parts. So I thought I'd take you along on the excursion. Fish excursion. And see how that goes. But whenever I'm using something new, I always do a test first. So that's what I did, going on about, 20 hours ago now almost, which is more than enough time. This stuff has a ridiculous long open time and clamp time, which is like, it's marked 12 hours versus hide glue, which has like a hot minute. So it's a bit different, but in the end it's supposed to dry really hard and sort of, they call it like crispy, which is what I want for this particular application. So we'll talk more about that later. Anyway, so the box is pine. So I grabbed a couple of pine scraps and did a test. So let's take a look here, see how it turned out. So far so good. Yeah, that's not going to come apart. Pretty much ever, at least by hand. Yeah, that would take probably some power tools, not hand tools. So that's pretty impressive. I'm pretty happy with that. So this is going to be a steel string tenor guitar. It's going to be, I think, about 23-inch scale, which is on the outer end of the tenor guitar scale range. But when I'm starting out, first thing I think about, and these are the 3 best pieces of advice I've ever gotten, and I feel like it's my mission to pass along to you. So the first 2 are, think about the end product and the end result that you want, and then work back step by step to the beginning. And at each step, anticipate what could go wrong and what you're going to do about it when it does, because it will. The third piece of advice we'll get into in about a week. But that right there is enough, I think, to maybe even change your approach to building. So I know I want like about a 23-inch steel string tenor guitar. And this box turns out to ideally be about the same surface area as a tenor uke. So that's encouraging. That actually played a part in choosing it for this build. But still, what I need to think about here are I'm going to want to preserve that lid for sure, right? That's the whole story right there, is that lid. I mean, come on. So, but what we're going to do is we're going to use that as the back of the guitar. So we're going to be removing it, we're going to be thinning it down, and we're going to be laminating it. And of course that means the original box back or bottom, that's going away. That's gone. That's done. That's going to be scrap. And then the top is going to be a nice two-piece spruce, thinned down, you know, it's an acoustic tenor guitar. So spruce top. Let's take a look what we got here. So the box is basically, the lid is like this, right? So I need to think about this. When we're talking about acoustic instruments, you got to think about what's going on the top, because the top is driving the string vibration through the box, back out whatever sound holes you've got, and that's creating your acoustic projection and your volume and even your tone. So like I said, working back. So I know that I need to think about the volume of space, which means air, capacity inside the box, which is the body, right? Now, it's a 4 steel string guitar, so you always got to think about the string tension and the impact on that top, and how much air that's actually going to drive through the box. So it's all relative, right? But I know for sure that, again, if you take a look at, and remember that this is going away, this is going to be thinner, and we'll talk about that, why, in a minute. You got to think about, in the end, I'm going to end up with this as the thickness if I just look at the bottom half of the box, right? And thinking about, you know, even a ukulele, that's just less than optimal for building up enough air circulation to project back out. So I know I'm going to want to use the whole box. So that's what we're going to do. But before we do any of that, remember, I got to take off the top, I got to take off the bottom, I got to thin down the sides. So I want to make sure this thing is super secure, that it's going to transmit energy efficiently all the way from the top to the back out the sound holes. So we're going to glue it. All right. Now, again, working back. So this stuff turns tacky, like really tacky. So you want to keep some water and paper towels ready. You're going to need them. So because the squeeze out and the cleanup are such an issue, I went ahead and taped up along the contact edge here, just to help down the road make cleanup a breeze, right? I'd much rather just use some tape that I can just peel off than sit here forever with water and a rag and soaking pine, which, you know, we don't want to get into what's going to happen when you do that. So, so I've thought back to that problem, and there you go. Okay, so before I put my tape on, you also want to think about the contact between all of your edges, which are your gluing surfaces, right? And make sure there are no gaps, or at least significant gaps, because of course you want good energy transmission from the top down to the back, and if you have gaps there, of course you're going to lose that. what you want to do is just get a good slip of paper, thin, right? And just go along and just hold the lid down firmly, just so that it's not super loose, because of course, you know, it's going to be glued. So to simulate that, I'm just going to rest my hand, and you just want to, you know, give a little tug and see, because if it slips right out, you know, then you know there's too much of a gap, right? But this is nice and tight, which tells me, and you know, every couple inches, good and tight there, good and tight there. I'm not worried at all. So I know I'm going to have those really good rigid sides that help to transmit all of the energy from the top down along the sides to the back, and help, you know, create that good airflow and projection. So what I will do, just because it, you know, it's an old wine box, it was used at some point, who knows where it's been, just to clean up maybe any dirt or dust or anything that's kind of impacted on that edge, that's gonna, you know, sort of inhibit the glue contact. I'll take some thin sanding blocks, narrow sanding blocks, and some higher grit sandpaper. I'd say minimum like 300, because I don't want to really start removing any material here, right? I want to try and preserve my contact as best I can, but I do want to kind of freshen it up a little bit to, you know, open it up for the glue. So I'll go 300, and having a narrow block just helps me run it along the edges. And just kind of just clean it up, freshen it up a little bit. And then same thing over here. And it's important to make sure that, you know, you're flat, flush on the surface. So, all right, here we go. And again, I'm not too worried about, you know, any squeeze out or drip on the inside, because that's going to get thinned down. The inside, you know, the inside surface is going to go away anyway. So and like I say, this is the second time I'm working with this stuff. And I can tell you right now, this is where you really appreciate the long open time, because, you know, for energy transmission applications, normally I'll use hide glue, because it dries crystalline hard. And I think that makes for the best energy, you know, transmission between surfaces. Tight bond, on the other hand, is an aliphatic, I think is what they call it. And it's an aliphatic polymer resin, and it's basically like close to a polyvinyl glue, which polyvinyl glue is like white glue, like for paper. In any event, get past the science. You know, if you even think about the word polyvinyl, basically that stuff, what it's doing is it's wetting the two contact surfaces, kind of melding them together into basically like a plastic. And I've actually done tests, I've done stress tests with all sorts of glues, and what you're going to find is when you break apart a tight bond contact, first of all, the wood breaks before the glue contact surface. So that's good. But what you notice is that that glue contact point is very, very, very plastic. I mean, it's literally turns to plastic. So, you know, imagine trying to pull plastic and, you know, how it kind of starts to get stretchy and, you know, rubbery. And that's exactly what happens when you try to break a tight bond contact. I'm not worried about those hinges because unfortunately they're going to have to be coming off just for player comfort. I really like the romance of them, but that's not going to work out too well for us. And we don't want to get too careless here. All right, so we got plenty of glue, that's for sure. This stuff reactivates itself pretty well. You can also use a little bit of water if you feel like you need to reactivate, but I'm not too worried. Anyway, yeah, so tight bond really basically turns into essentially plastic. And when I think about energy transmission and when I've seen that plastic bond, you know, it just seems like it's not going to transmit energy efficiently from one piece to the other piece. You know, you're going to kind of like lose it in the buffer of that plastic bond. Hide glue, on the other hand, dries like tempered glass. I mean, super, super stiff and rigid. So I think that's a really faithful transmission of energy from one surface to the other. So that's what I want to think about is what's the function of the parts that I'm gluing. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, what's the function of the parts that I'm gluing? And that tells me the best glue to use. So in this case, I knew that I wanted efficient energy transfer. I didn't want to lose it in any sort of, you know, like a plasticky buffer. But I knew that there was no way I was going to be able to use hide glue like this. Without getting into the details too much, if you know, you know. And if you don't, look it up. It's great stuff, but it's super high maintenance to work with. So, fish glue, yeah, I think that's the ideal solution here. So I think we're going to be good here. I just want to make sure that I've got it spread across the entire edge. I definitely want full contact, especially on the outside edges of the sides here, but why not all of it? We're only talking about what, 3/8 inch thick edge. So yeah, that's plenty. That's it's actually going on a little bit heavier than I really meant to, but that's also helping me make sure I've got good coverage. And I also know I'm going to get some decent squeeze out, which makes me really happy that I got that tape on there. If it was Type Bond, I'm 100% sure that that squeeze out would drip past the tape. So I'd have to move really, really fast to clean it up. But that tape also gives me that safety zone, right? So as it's dripping down, I've got plenty of time to grab, you know, some paper towel and save myself. So thinking back each step, what can go wrong, prepare for it. Never, ever fails. All right, that's it. We're good to go. Again, we got that added benefit of these clasps. So we've got like a built-in clamping system. So I'm going to go ahead, press down, get the clamp there, get the clasp there. We'll take a quick look, and you can already see squeeze out, I think. All right, I'm not too worried about that. I mean, I could go ahead and give a swipe just for the heck of it. But that's not nearly anything I'm worried about. It's almost not worth getting it all over my fingers, because now I'm going to have to touch the rest of the box, and I don't want to be spreading it all over. All right. We go over here. We got squeeze out, which is also a good sign, right? It means we've got good contact. All right, so I think we're ready for clamps. So initially I'm just going to get those tight enough just to make sure that they set in place. And I'll work at my opposite ends. Yeah, I want to be careful. These have those super handy little surface protector sheaths there, so you want to make sure those are down at your clamping ends. Okay, we're good. Alright, this is a good time to have a little sort of pedestal to take up the height. And again, I'm working always at the opposites just to make sure my pressure is even all the way around instead of working sort of progressively. This way I can work all my ends to the middles.
Approximately 10 hours later.
All right, everything's stayed nice and tight and even all the way around. I'll probably go ahead and get a couple of quart cans of paint on there just to keep everything weighted down and nice and tight for overnight. And then tomorrow we'll come back in and start to look at getting that top off carefully and the back bottom off, you know, maybe a little less carefully. We don't have to worry. And go from there. So I hope you got something out of this. Really appreciate you guys tuning in and following along. Yeah, we'll see you next time and have some more fun. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye. Now this is a completely unscientific test, but let's see what it takes. Since I couldn't pull the pieces apart by hand, it was time to escalate.
I'm gonna get medieval on your ass.
So the first thing I notice is how the two pieces shared the stress load and failure, and the more or less equal, almost book-matched corner-to-corner break pattern on the joined area. I mean, this is soft pine. A hardwood like walnut, mahogany, or maple would have probably taken more than one hit to break. But the really interesting thing is that the break is all in the grain on both pieces. The glued surfaces are still intact. And I'm way out of my league on the physics, but it's obvious the bigger chunk came out of the longer piece that I chose as the easier target to hit. I'm guessing the small portions tell us something, but I have no idea. If you have any thoughts, drop them in the comments. So, what have we learned today, class? Well, I think 3 things. Don't hit your guitar with a hammer, especially if it's a pine caster. Glue is stronger than wood. And fish are sticky. Thanks for watching.